Speaking Wind, a Native American author, lecturer, and publisher, was raised by Grandfather Two Bears and White Eagle of the Pueblo people. He knew them as spirit callers, but in today's terms, we would call them shaman. He and his brothers, Chiwe and Nahi, were raised in the mountains of northern New Mexico by Grandfather and Two Bears for almost 20 years in their early life. This is where they were introduced to the ways of the Spirit. However, these teachings were to be put asleep for a time and were not to be remembered until the time was right. But before the time was right, Grandfather, Two Bears, and White Eagle left with their bodies, and later Chiwe and Nahe ended their journey with the Earth Mother as well. That left Speaking Wind alone to sort out and process what he had been given to share. When Speaking Wind, Chiwe and Nahe, were very young, they were placed in a private boarding school for several years. This became the first of their experience from having the control of others attempt to bury their spiritual beliefs. During their boarding school experience, they were not allowed to speak their people's language or practice their spirituality. And they were placed upon them many scars of abuse for breaking these rules. However, they did what I did and asked too many questions from the teachings of Grandfather Two Bears and White Eagle. Questions the teachers could not answer. So, they were labeled as spawns of Satan. I'm familiar with such a label. And they were forced to leave so they would not influence the children who were not following the devil's evil ways. When Speaking Wind, Nahe, and Chiwe entered the public school system, they could barely read or write. So not only the teachers, but the students called them dumb half-breeds. That obviously left a mark on them, gave them the determination to pursue their academic goals. Chiwe completed his Ph.D., and worked as one of the head archaeologists in the Yucatan Peninsula, uncovering many ancient writings and civilizations that related to ancient prophecies. He pursued a career in law enforcement, then went on to become sheriff in a small town in New Mexico. Speaking Wind attained 2 undergraduate degrees, 2 graduate degrees, and completed 1/2 of his Ph.D. He taught in the School of Business at the University of Phoenix, then worked as a consultant in Asia, and almost 16 years in Europe, and he is here tonight. Speaking Wind, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Art.
Great to have you. I have heard of you from many people, but this is the first time that we have ever spoken.
Yes, it is, and I would like to extend the compliment that I have heard about you from many of my friends, and everyone speaks of you with a really good heart and a good face.
Spawns of Satan, huh?
Spawns of Satan. It usually comes when you don't follow the mandates that are set before you or become ascriptive to whatever modalities are set forth on you. It's really silly, Art, because it's all fear-driven.
I know. They call me the devil's toe jam. And so I accept that, I guess. I just
Art, if you get a chance, red willow bark tea would help your friend with the cancer. It's a blood cleanser. Just have her drink tea 3 times a day.
I appreciate that. It's a pretty serious situation. It's actually more than a friend. It's a family member. Anyway, look, I would like to talk with you about what you know of Earth changes. I can tell you what I know. I wrote a book called The Quickening. And in that book, I laid out a very careful chain of evidence that in every single area of human endeavor, from politics to social behavior, to the environment, to our economy, to relationships between nations, and scientific advances, things were beginning to speed up at a faster and faster, even exponential rate, and that we're headed toward something. But I'm not a prophet. I'm not a Native American. I'm not privy to any of... So I don't know what it's headed toward. All I know is we're moving toward some sort of event, some sort of change and particularly the environment. I mean, tonight, for example, I've got a story from the Electronic Telegraph that says the permafrost in Alaska is melting. Yeah. Big pieces of the Antarctic are falling off. Birds are where they shouldn't be. Fish now are in waters where they should not be. Things are changing very rapidly. Diseases are in our ocean. Our crabs and fish with sores that are beginning to make people sick. Something is profoundly wrong, and that's what I know to be true.
Yes.
So the question is, I guess, what do you know about what's happening and what is going to happen?
All right. What I'd like to do is basically take it into four particular phases and begin with just a general caveat, and then if you have any questions on that, we can go into that.
Sure.
And then little by little hit this thing until we pinpoint toward the end.
Sure.
Basically, it's this, and this brings it right into today. The material I'll be speaking out of is from the latest manuscript I just finished, was Keepers of the Beast. But since June of 1998, everyone began feeling waves of depression and anxiety.
That's right.
All for no apparent reason.
Right.
Other than the fulfillment of ancient prophecy, which states we are now standing at the end of time for life as we know it. While this is true, it is not as final as many would have you believe. Neither the earth or life on it is going to end, but it's going to change. Mm-hmm. And it will change of such tremendous proportions it's going to seem as if we're about to become extinct. The world basically has been separated into four distinct time periods, each lasting approximately 10,000 years, and we've called them the four worlds. Before the first one began, life on this earth was a virtual Garden of Eden. There was no pain, no sorrow, no want or desire, but there came a catastrophe that ended that and forced us out of the garden. That resulted in the four worlds, each of which held specific lessons for us to learn. However, a promise was made, which said in the end, we will all return to the garden and live in peace for all time, and now that time is nearing.
Well, the Christians, of course, would suggest that it was a great-looking young lady with an apple in her hand saying, here, take a bite, and he did, and that was it, and we're out, everybody out of the pool.
Metaphorically, it's true. The thing that took away this garden was a runaway planet that entered the solar system, believing that the night was the lady of the night, the lady that would take care of us and lay us down to sleep. The apple in her hand, it didn't come from an apple tree, perhaps. It came from the runaway planet. It literally created the asteroid belt.
Do you refer, by the way, as you speak of this, to Sitchin's 12th planet?
Yes.
Ah. All right. Well, the 12th planet, I interviewed, as a matter of fact, Mr. Sitchin about 3 weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, I think. And so I'm quite familiar with what he believes, that this planet, this rogue planet, returns every so often.
I misunderstood you, Art.
Okay.
No, this is the planet that's still here with us.
Oh, okay.
And it is totally out of sync with the other planets in our solar system. It has established its own rotation, its own particular orbit, and you can see it every night.
How?
What's that?
How?
How?
Yes.
By looking at the North Star, I believe it's called Venus.
Yes.
What happened is Earth was a garden. Well, we'll go into that in just a second.
All right.
And but let me get back to a promise that was made. The garden, the beautiful garden I was talking about.
Yes.
Each of the four worlds had lessons that we were to learn from, and a promise was made which said that in the end we'll all return to the garden and live in peace for all time. Okay, but this is close to the ending of the fourth world. But there was a condition put on all of us, one that would have to be met before we would be allowed to enter the garden of life. We were told there would come a prolonged period of time among the last generation to live in the fourth world, which is us, where all illusion and the lie we have been told was real must be released. In the beginning, this would be voluntary, but as we neared the final doorway, the closing of the fourth world, our choices would be less and less. And all things that did not hold truth for us, if not voluntarily released, would be stripped away, for none of it would be allowed into the fifth world, the Eden we've all longed for, basically. But for many of us, like the lie and the illusion is all we've ever known.